All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, a lot of times in life we'll come across people who they're not quite sure what the hell they want. They happen to be hyper talented or very gifted, but maybe they've gone through certain traumatic situations in the past, stressful conditions, and they're worried that if they divulge too much of what their actual goals are, that what they say will be used against them down the road. And I do believe that that happens to be the case with Mr. Kevin Durant, who recently stated that he's not concerned with being the quote-unquote GOAT, or the greatest of all time. And I'm not quite sure if I can believe that, because this is the same KD who spent the last 10 years saying that he's frustrated with not being number one. Now, have his priorities changed? I doubt that. I just think that he's matured to the point where he no longer is concerned with being as transparent as possible with the fans and or the media, because he knows that most of his words will be used against him down the line. There's a very toxic rapport between top-level athletes and the media. The media is almost like an annoying baby mama that has good coochie. She's trying to constantly antagonize you, but you know that you get some benefits from her. That's the condition of the battle with these top-shelf athletes and the media. They do need the media to a degree, so they have to make sure that they utilize a certain amount of scruples when they interact with them. So anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Kevin Durant has been doing a bit of reflecting since he recovers from his torn Achilles, and don't forget, has taken his talents to Brooklyn. Opening up in a Wall Street Journal article about the Warriors, OKC, and sometimes hating the NBA. Well, in a Twitter conversation yesterday, KD said that being the greatest of all time does not move him.
I doubt if that's really the case, because if it were, he probably would have retired by now, because he's made more than enough money. And at the end of the day, there are only so many more points you can score. I think that KD right now is somewhere around 21 or 22,000 points. So I'm sure that 30,000 points is a major milestone for him. He's going to be 31 years old next year, I believe. So I'd be willing to bet that he sees 35,000 points as attainable for him. We'll find out. What we do know is that Kevin Durant realizes that it's not really necessary for him to be transparent with everyone and or everybody, because most people do not have your best interest at heart.
Durant won back-to-back Finals MVPs with the Warriors and is a former league MVP. Max, do you believe KD when he says he has no interest in being the GOAT?
No, I don't believe him, but I also understand that Kevin Durant understands that he has a long way to go to even be considered the greatest player of all time. As I've already stated, he's about to be 31. He has to win at least 3 or 4 more championships to enter into that conversation. And that's why I always state that there's no way that LeBron James could even possibly be considered the greatest player ever with a 3-6 finals record, because at the end of the day, you do have to win the big one. And this notion from the LeBron James fanboys that you can be 3-6 and then make up all these corollaries about how LeBron James has gone against tougher competition than this player and that player is all a bunch of nonsense. You either win or you don't win. And the fact of the matter is that from the 2010 season all the way to the 2016 season, LeBron James is recognized as having the most talented team in the NBA, and he only won 3 championships over the course of that time frame in 6 years. So it is what it is. He's out of that conversation unless by some unforeseen miracle he's able to win 3 more championships in the next 3 or 4 years as an LA Laker. When it comes to Kevin Durant, he's at the level now in his career where it's more about action than talking. So good for him.
Absolutely not. I've heard this song from KD before when he was on the Thunder. When he was on the Oklahoma City Thunder, he used to talk about, and they'd suffer a devastating playoff loss. He used to say things, and I remember I used to talk about this on the radio. We did whole shows about it, even though we were in LA, because he's a important figure in the NBA. About how he marches to a beat, to a different beat. Like, not everyone necessarily has to be like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant in order to be a great player. But I wonder if it's possible to be among the greatest if you don't have, like, the very greatest, that Jordan, Kobe, Bird, Magic, level, if you don't have some of that in you, right? And he seemed to be the beta to Westbrook's alpha.
Well, you definitely have to be a quote-unquote dog, but let's also understand that when Kobe Bryant was playing, he was very reticent to acknowledge that he was chasing Jordan or anyone else like that until he felt like he was close enough to start acknowledging that. That's what was so strange about LeBron James's quote-unquote admission or his assertion that by defeating the Golden State Warriors in 2016 that not only allowed him to catch up to Jordan, but that it surpassed Michael Jordan. Like, that was a big joke to me, unless he was grading himself on a curve based on his background and what he allegedly had to be able to transcend, and his understanding that Michael Jordan most likely had less stumbling blocks because he came from a stable household. You know, people like LeBron James factor all that bullshit in because he knows that he has to formulate a different type of equation to equate himself with a Michael Jordan. But just getting back to Kobe and other players of that ilk, they also were very hesitant or reticent to say that I'm trying to be the greatest player ever while they were doing it, because they understood that their resume is going to have to be appraised at the very end, not in the middle.
Well, what's happened since then? Was winning a title important? Because KD was claiming that winning a title wasn't everything. The sun will still come up the next day. What happened since then? He made a career choice based on chasing rings that he's been roundly criticized for.
Well, he made a career choice based on chasing rings, but in my view, that view was also made so that he can come to understand a higher level of basketball. And I think that a lot of the chemistry issues that started to emerge on the Golden State Warriors between the rest of the team and Kevin Durant is when he got there and he learned their system and he started to become disenchanted by that system. He thought it was going to be like Shangri-La and everything was just going to flow appropriately. He was going to be able to immerse himself into their overall atmosphere. And it wasn't quite what he thought it was going to be. Like most people who think that the grass is greener on the other side, they get there and they're like, damn, this is just some regular old grass.
So clearly winning a ring was extremely important to him, even though he said otherwise. And why is that? Because to be as great as Kevin Durant and I don't care how tall you are, how gifted, you have to work so hard at it. And in order to put in that kind of work, you have to have a passion for it. You have to be next level competitive. So KD is all those things. That's how he got to this place. That's why a ring, even though he lied and said it wasn't important, was like the most important thing to him. Now he's saying being the GOAT, it's not for me. I don't know. What kind of nonsense is that? You know why you choose the Brooklyn Nets?
Actually, what Kevin Durant said is that being the GOAT isn't something that moves me. In other words, he's just displaying a component of his personality archetype that he's put on the forefront over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. That being that it's very difficult to satisfy him.
Do care about that, because you can never do it chasing, like just piling up rings on a team that can't lose in Golden State. Because people will correctly make the argument I made. You reverse engineered your greatness, brother. You went to a team that couldn't lose without you. Let's go. You see, you lead a team to.
Max Kellerman just stated that Kevin Durant went to a team that couldn't lose without him, even though they had just lost without him the year before he got there. And this is the issue that so many athletes have with the media. They'll concoct dual narratives about the same situation that will often contradict each other. Makes no sense whatsoever. Were the Golden State Warriors an unbeatable super team before Kevin Durant got there, or did they need to bring Kevin Durant in order to defeat LeBron James? Which one is it?
Championship that's not guaranteed. Now, Stephen A., his best days as a basketball player in terms of the level he's on, I bet you are behind him. But his greatest
Possibly.
days in terms of what he can accomplish are now in front of him. If he, as even some percentage of what he used to be, can lead the Nets to a championship, that validates everything he's done in a new way.
I agree with that. In the same way that Kobe Bryant winning those 2 championships without Shaq allowed his appraisers to include those first 3 championships into his overall resume when they appraised it. Because at the end of the day, whether people want to acknowledge it, admit it or not, before Kobe was able to defeat the Orlando Magic and the Boston Celtics in 2009 and 2010, he was viewed as being strictly a sidekick. That's all he was viewed as. That's why it's so comical to me to see his fanboys try to, as Max Kellerman would state, reverse engineer Kobe's career or reverse appraise it and claim that Kobe was some type of, not even just a partner, but actually the alpha on that squad. It's a big joke to me. But just to get back to the point, if KD were able to win 2 championships in Brooklyn, it would certainly validate what he was able to do in Golden State. Specifically, if Golden State is unable to win any more championships from here on out in the Steph Curry tenure on that squad.
Trust me, he will enter the LeBron James territory in the conversation. People like you, the greatest pure scorer. He's up there with Kareem or Michael. Defensively, he turned himself into a great player. He has 3 rings, and not only that, Finals MVPs, and then look what he did in Brooklyn.
If KD's able to win a 3rd championship in Brooklyn, and LeBron does not win any more championships, then yes, Kevin Durant or LeBron becomes a conversation. I would still favor LeBron James, but it will become a conversation.
Of course he cares. That's why he's making the decisions he's making.
Actually, I think you're missing it. I'm going to believe Kevin Durant on this particular one because I think that you're missing, you're focusing on the AT as opposed to everything else. When you talk about the greatest of all time, I don't think that KD is preoccupied with that. My personal opinion, he's
probably because he does not understand how close he is. If he's able to win just 2 more championships, all of a sudden, he's someone that you have to start debating whether or not he's a top 10 all-time great player. He's right outside of that top 10 if he wins 2 more championships. Right now, he's top 20 all-time. I cannot quite include him in my 11 to 15 with Kobe and Isaiah Thomas, Moses Malone, Dr. J, Oscar Robertson. But if he were to win 2 more championships, he definitely knocks one of those guys out, most likely Oscar Robertson. Right now, even though Oscar only has 1 chip, I have to put him ahead of KD because Oscar did not play in the era of free agency. The first season he was able to join another great player, he wins a championship. They played 4 seasons together. They went to the finals twice. And in 74, they probably should have beat, I believe the Celtics it was that they lost to in 74. And they probably should have won that series. The Milwaukee Bucks with Oscar Robertson, an older Oscar Robertson. I think he was like 35, 36 years old, and Kareem. So I think that when you evaluate these players' careers, you have to factor in context. As of right now, 11 to 15, not in any particular order on my list, Kobe, Isaiah Thomas, Dr. J, Moses Malone, Oscar Robertson. KD is somewhere in that 16 to 20 area. If he's able to win 2 more championships, he vaults into that top 15. Somebody else has to come out, no doubt about it.
He's more interested in being known as the greatest today, meaning greater than LeBron James. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, let me say that I have no doubt that KD will be neither. KD is somebody that, our private conversations are what they are, and I'm not going to divulge that. But what I will give him credit for is that he has more courage and more integrity than most guys in terms of if he has an issue with you and he knows you well enough, he will come to you directly because that's what he does to me when he sees something that he...
In other words, that was a very subtle shot at LeBron James. Stephen A. Smith is saying that Kevin Durant will at least speak to me face to face, proverbially speaking, whether it's over text message, over the phone, or if I happen to see him one-on-one, he'll tell me how he actually feels, as opposed to a LeBron James who has his team try to concoct a narrative.
Flat out does not agree with in regards to what I've said. And he's done that on several occasions, and he has every right to do it. If I'm talking about him and he thinks I'm wrong, I encourage him to come to clap back at me and let me know, which he doesn't hesitate to do. And I give him a lot of respect for that. In this particular situation, here's what I think. I don't think that Kevin Durant is preoccupied with where he's going to rank in history. I'm not saying that will always be the case, but I think that's...
Obviously, that's going to be the case as he nears the end of his career. But as of right now, he still knows that there's still too much of the Kevin Durant story to write for himself as the author.
And he'll think about when all is said and done and he walks away from the game. He obviously knows he has several years left in his tank, assuming that he recovers nicely from that Achilles tear. But I think that when you talk about him against Kawhi Leonard, him and the Greek Freak, him, Anthony Davis, him and LeBron James, do I think that there's something inside of him that wants to be recognized universally as the greatest in the game today? Mm-hmm. Yes.
No doubt about it.
Most people would say it's LeBron. So I think that is something that he would want.
Well, the greatest in the game today, as of right now, is Kawhi Leonard. It's not LeBron. LeBron has to prove that he's deserving of being considered the best player in the NBA, especially after he was unable to make the playoffs last year. I mean, give me a break.
You talk about the greatest in history, the Birds, the Magics, the Jordans, and everybody else. I don't think that's something that KD preoccupies himself with at all. I think when he makes that kind of statement, that it's not something that moves him, it's that he ain't thinking about that at all. He's thinking about the here and now because he can't control how somebody views Jordan or Kareem or anybody else. But he does believe that he can have some influence over how you should be looking at today's players who he's going against right now.
Well, maybe that's true. maybe what I'm saying is a byproduct of his focusing on the now, right? And so if he does all that, he can wind up on those lists. But it still speaks to the point that KD wants to be the best. He's very competitive. Tries to play it off in certain ways. Like, he's not as much, but clearly being second banana to Russell Westbrook in terms of the mentality, being the beta to his alpha, bothered him. He didn't when he got out of that situation.
What truly bothered Kevin Durant, in my view, just clearly my own perspective, wasn't just that Russell Westbrook tried to take the mantle of the alpha on that team, but on top of that, Sam Presti and the coach co-signed Russell Westbrook being the alpha on that team, and Kevin Durant sat back and looked at it almost like a child in a classroom who saw a badass kid constantly getting student of the month. It's like, you guys are investing our future in this dude, a person who consistently makes bad decision after bad decision in clutch moments. And not only that, but it was impacting Kevin Durant's prime as a player. His entire mid to late 20s was wasted playing alongside Russell Westbrook. So that's really, I think, what pissed him off and what instigated his move to the Golden State Warriors. He saw from an outsider looking in a team that seemed to flow harmoniously on the basketball court, specifically on the offensive side of the ball.
Then on the Warriors, he said, well, it was always them and me, it was separate. No, really what it was is you said the weakest move ever by a superstar. I've said you're reverse engineering your greatness.
That's a part of it. The media narrative affected Kevin Durant's perspective or his understanding on how well he fit in with the Golden State Warriors from my perspective, in my view. I also think that he did not believe that he fit in well with a lot of those guys, whether it's Stephen Curry or Klay Thompson. I also believe that he was a little unnerved with the pretentious nature of the super liberal Caucasian sphere that hovers over that team. The Joe Lacobs, the Bob Myers, the Steve Kerr triumvirate. What they like to do, as most super liberal Caucasians enjoy doing, is talking down to a lot of the so-called black element that they associate with and acting as if they're including them when they're really not. They'll speak to you in a very slow way or speak loudly, trying to imply that you don't understand what they're saying, things like that, which of course is a connotation of them being more intelligent than you. It would not surprise me if Kevin Durant experienced this phenomenon and he said to himself, I'm not going to tolerate this after my third season here, I'm out of here, things like that. As well as Bob Myers making the extremely awkward but revelatory joke that he made at the end of the Golden State Warriors' second championship run, where he basically asserted that Stephen Curry was above KD because he was the homegrown product. Why you would say something like that when you're still trying to court KD, I have no idea why, other than Bob Myers probably was drunk and he spoke his true heart. Who the hell knows? Tried to couch it in joke form. But all of these things combined to tell Kevin Durant, I have to get the hell up out of here.
Rings are supposed to prove something about you. All this proves is when you put another all-star on a team like that, or an MVP player, they can't lose. What it doesn't say the things you're trying to say. The decision he made to go to Brooklyn, the biggest market in the world, New York City, starving for a championship in basketball in the NBA since 1973, starving for a championship on any major league level, unless you count the ABA with Dr. J, since the 50s with the Brooklyn Dodgers, if you're just looking at Brooklyn. When you make that choice with all that pressure, the media scrutiny, without any guarantee you're ever going to win, what you're saying is, here's a challenge that I'm going to leave no doubt. I'm going to prove everything that people are saying about me wrong and validate everything. Yeah. If he does that, he's in the uppermost echelon.
Couple of things to look at here. Number one, as you pointed out, Cleveland did win the championship, 4 years ago or so. They acquired, Golden State lost. They acquired Kevin Durant. They win the next two. Kevin Durant goes down, and they lose to Toronto. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that if Kevin Durant was healthy, Toronto Raptors would have been done in 5 days.
No doubt about it.
They'd have been smoked. We understand the difference that Kevin Durant made. Okay, so we understand that. And I think the point that needs to be made in defense of him is in regards to this. I think that Kevin Durant is not somebody that sits around and watches somebody praise LeBron, praise Anthony Davis, or the Greek Freak, and reacts to that. What Kevin Durant reacts to is that he's on the court displaying his greatness, career 27-point per game scorer, 49% shooting from the field, 38% from three-point range, one of the most prolific, efficient scorers in NBA history that we've ever witnessed. And we
outside of Michael Jordan, the most proficient high-level scorer of the past 35 years is Kevin Durant.
People trying to get at him and diminish him. That's what he's responding to. And so when you look at it from that perspective, that's when I can understand him clapping back. I can understand somebody, if he's sitting at home minding his business, and all we're saying is, you know what, LeBron is the greatest, Kevin Durant's up there, Greek freak, this and that, that would be one thing. If we're sitting up there saying, well, Kevin Durant ain't this, and Kevin Durant ain't that, and this is what Kevin Durant needs to be, I don't blame him for saying, wait a second, this is what I bring. Now, we might disagree with him, but I don't blame him for clapping back at that if somebody comes at him that way.
Think about don't look at what someone says or what they think, or look at what they do.
Sure.
What did he do after saying, championship's not going to make my legacy? He chose to leave Russell Westbrook and go win championships with the Golden State
Why
Warriors.
did he do that?
Now, what I'm saying, okay, whatever else you want to say, I'm saying, isn't it interesting
I'm asking.
how, well, he wants to play the right way. No, he knew he's not going to be entertained seriously in those conversations if he's not a champion. He knew.
Yes, but he also wanted to leave Russell Westbrook because Russell Westbrook is self-destructive, he's delusional, and he's dysfunctional. And I have no understanding why it's so difficult for the media to include that aspect of the overall narrative into the storyline, other than the fact that they're fanboys of this dude, Russell Westbrook, and that's actually stopping him from becoming the best player that he can be. Russell Westbrook has been held back from being a better version of himself because of fanboys in the media that have tried to demonize Kevin Durant as an aspect of why Russell Westbrook has not been allowed to win championships. He's not a championship player. I even did a video about this where Isaiah Thomas, arguably the greatest small man of all time, me personally, I don't think that it's an argument that he's the greatest player in the history of the NBA under 6'2". He was on First Take and he stated himself without a shadow of a doubt that Russell Westbrook is not a championship player.
But it is. He protested that it's not important to him, but it was. The reason I'm bringing that up is this. When you talk about the all-time greats, and this is why I bring it to all-time, of all the non-bigs, there's only one guy other than Jordan in the conversation. There's Michael Jordan, there's all the bigs, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaquille O'Neal.
Hakeem Olajuwon, Tim Duncan.
There's one other guy, and it's LeBron James. After that tier, people start talking about Magic, Bird, and Kobe, right? That's the tiers. There's MJ in a class by himself, the bigs with LeBron, Magic, Bird, and Kobe.
You know, Max Kellerman, I partially agree with that assertion. What's interesting, though, is that a couple of weeks ago, you claimed that Kobe Bryant is a top 10 all-time player. I have to wonder if you're including Tim Duncan and Hakeem Olajuwon in your designation of the quote-unquote bigs, because I include them, specifically since Hakeem Olajuwon is the most skilled big man in the history of the NBA on both offense and defense, and Tim Duncan is the greatest power forward in the history of the NBA. And as long as you have that assertion or that understanding, that means that Kobe Bryant is not a top 10 all-time great player. The one thing that I would disagree with you on is that I probably would put Magic and Bird, well, I certainly would put them ahead of most of the bigs outside of Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And at this point, I would probably put LeBron James somewhere in the middle of Shaq, Tim Duncan, and Hakeem Olajuwon. Even though, to be quite honest with you, one could make the argument that LeBron should be at the very bottom of the top 10 list, especially with his performance last season and what I anticipate is going to happen this season, that being that the Lakers are not going to be anywhere near as good as people think that they're going to be, and that they're probably going to go out in the second round, but we'll see. But once again, just going by what Max Kellerman himself has stated, when he says that the big men all come right behind Jordan, if you include Tim Duncan and Hakeem Olajuwon in that designation of big men, that leaves Kobe outside of the top 10. And Max Kellerman himself has implied that he believes that Tim Duncan and Hakeem Olajuwon are greater players than Kobe was.
KD, the decision he made was to join the conversation with LeBron, to say, like right now, he's not with Bird, he's not with Magic, he's not with Kobe,
but what you're misconstruing is that I'm disagreeing with you about that. I am not. What I'm saying is, let's get into why he left Oklahoma City, not why he went to Golden State.
All right.
I'm saying when you think about why he left Oklahoma City, we talked a lot about the Russell Westbrook element. We didn't talk enough about the Sam Presti element. We didn't talk enough about the one thing, because Sam Presti certainly knows how to build a roster. He certainly knows how to be an executive in the NBA. There's no questioning the man. Listen, Oklahoma City is one of the top winning teams in the NBA over the last decade. There's nothing to
on the fly.
There's nothing to question about Sam Presti in regards to that. There's only one thing. You had Scott Brooks and then Billy Donovan. With the players, the players that you have. So you pick dudes that you were comfortable with, but may not have necessarily been the best guys. And I respect those coaches, but they may not have been the best guys for those jobs.
Yeah, that's
all right,
legit.
so that has a lot to do with it too now. Okay.
Right, well, we also have to understand that Kevin Durant, quote-unquote, liked Scotty Brooks. The problem with Scotty Brooks is that he's just not that good a coach. Scott Brooks is not a good coach. He had those guys out there playing street ball. But anyway, we'll see how things go for Mr. Kevin Durant next season. Do I believe that he does care about being considered the greatest player of all time? Yes, I do. But I also understand that Kevin Durant seems to understand that he cannot put the cart before the horse. He has to make sure that when the dust settles, he is the best player of his generation before he enters himself into the conversation as the best player ever. Because in order for you to do that, you have to be considered the best player of your generation. And once again, that's why I've always said it's very difficult for me to consider Kobe Bryant a top 10 all-time great player when there are very few people who even considered him the best or the most impactful or the most dominant player of his generation. It is what it is. So peace.